on other cable companies unless you have the internet or unless you have a 2-hour cable TV program of a chat with Glendora. But the synopsis is that Diane Bennett and Alyssa Amato violated public access rights and dropped a chat with Glendora from 10 p.m. in the evening down to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. This cut Glendora's TV audience by 4/5. It's a violation of first come, first serve. It's a violation of cable public access shall be administered on a non-discriminatory basis, and it's a violation of editorial control, and it's a violation of limit and prohibit, because the 4 p.m. audience is 4/5 of what the 10 p.m. audience is. And we got up as far as page 7 on this, and enter Robert Callaghy and Walter Sawrock and Sadly Stevens, Burke and Burke. They are a liar for hire gang. In this particular instance, I doubt very much that they got any money for it. I kind of thought that they were doing it pro bono because they made such a mess of the default judgment against Cecilia Masterilli in the White Plains City Court. Cecilia being another Cablevision employee who persecuted a chat with Glendora and violated your rights, your First Amendment rights to know. And so the case came before Christian Hummel in the Supreme Court, County of Columbia, State of New York. And he was a bomb. He didn't do his job. It looked like to me that he was improperly influenced. He was amateurish about it. He never came up with any law. He was just conclusory. And I made a motion to him, a motion analogous to Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, relief from his judgment, relief from his order. And that was about 80 pages, and I read it to you on the TV. And it took a couple of hours, 2-3 programs. And then this liar for hire Sawrock of Sadly Stevens, Burke and Burke gets out in opposition to my motion for relief from order. And I am writing, or have written, this is 100 pages, my affirmation, my reply affirmation to his. He should have made a cross motion, is what he should have made. Okay, and so we were saying that Hummel is an amateur, and after all he is an, quote, acting, unquote, Supreme Court Justice. A real Supreme Court Justice would have given something to the plaintiff and would not have sold out completely to complicity and to common guilt. But Christian Hummel cost Glendora the full price of $315. That's what it cost to file this case in the Supreme Court, County of Columbia. We were on page 7. The issue, little ghostwriter, is public access was not administered on a non-discriminatory basis. Again, dear ghostwriter, this is federal, state, and municipal mandate. It's 47 U.S. Code, section 521 et sequitur. New York State 16, Title 16, New York State Code Rules and Regulations 595.4, and all the municipal franchises. Cablevision Dolan do not like Glendora telling subscribers that their rate increases with no advantage to you, the subscriber, are without merit. And that United States District Judge Arthur Spat cheated and lied and stole in Maroney versus Cablevision and in Inverness versus Cablevision. And that Spat's law clerk, Jeffrey Amato, is related to Alyssa Amato, an administrator of public access at Cablevision. Plus the fact that Arthur Spat, in a court conference, called up Cablevision's lawyer, and with a courtroom full of people, Arthur Spat talked to Cablevision's lawyer and said to him, "How is your father?" What does this begin to sound like to you? Amato, Amato, and spat. How is your father? The issue is discrimination against Glendora. Your very first words, Christian Hummel, are prejudiced, pro-Caligate. Why? What is your motive? Your attitude and conduct and posture instantly arouse suspicion. Remember, you cost Glendora $315. She has not got one iota of her money's worth. But Caligate, or whoever got their money's worth, or whatever it was, and Christian F. Hummel is on his way to federal court, where Glendora will prosecute to the fullest the mighty power of Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rules 26 to Rule 37, the discovery rules. And she is going to get to the bottom of this. Glendora did not lose, quote unquote, her time slot, her 10 p.m. Friday time slot. It was stolen from her. They departed clandestinely with it. They stole off with it and then secreted themselves. Later, Hummel joined them. Again on page 2 of Hummel, he acknowledges that Glendora's demand for 26 make-goods, he acknowledges it. And at a minimum, he could have done that. But he is only an acting, quote-unquote, Supreme Court justice. Glendora still demands it 26 make-goods in prime time any evening between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. before December the 31st, 2006. Public access is an allodium, folks. It is an allodium. It is ours without any fee, without any service to a superior, without any acknowledgement to a superior. Public access is an allodium. The issue is discrimination against Glendora. We are on page 10. Move. Hummel did not have to award $23,000 as punitive and compensatory damages. He could have awarded it by an unamphibolous default judgment by doing his job that he was supposed to do. At least he could have rewarded the cost. For his total failure, Glendora demands the return of her $315 on the basis of fraud. He is advertised as a court of justice, and he is not. He is advertised as a court of law. He is not. He doesn't use the law. Everything he says is conclusory. This is consumer fraud. Now, Hummel quotes at great length Caligate, but he never quotes Glendora. And he quotes Caligate as saying that they used to have a system of people lining up outdoors, and people used to stay up all night out in the cold. In the wintertime, February, out in the ice and snow, and in the summertime, August, out in the heat and the rain. And Glendora says no matter what method Cablevision uses to hand out time slots, it is illegal because of first come, first served. When I was given my time slot in 1993, 10 p.m. Fridays, it's mine until I relinquish it. And Hummel quotes Caligate as saying, the process was changed some time ago to a system whereby the public applied for time slots by mail. All applications mailed on a particular date were then placed in random order by a computer program. Well, obviously, that's a game of chance. That doesn't require any skill by the public access producer. It's a lottery. and a lottery is against the law in the state of New York. And Hummel ignores all that for some reason, for some improper reason. He covers up for them. And he never proved any of it, nor did Hummel. It was in its entirety mere dictum. And what was the improper influence? Omicron. Hummel says, in response to defendant's answer, plaintiff supplied the court with 4 volumes of documents. The bulk of the documents consist of court papers in what appears to be an entirely unrelated matter in White Plains City Court. Hummel doesn't have the buttons upstairs to understand that that was not unrelated. It was most related. In his nescience and ridiculous incongruence, Hummel said that Glendora had to sue Cablevision, not Bennett Amato, employees. But in White Plains, Glendora sued an employee, Cecilia Mastrovilli, of Cablevision, and she won $5,020. So right there in front of Hummel's nose is another cheat. That was very related. Who or what seduced Hummel into ignoring this? Glendora served the 400 pages of Sarok's bumbling and evil record in White Plains, thinking that Hummel would be aghast. Instead, Hummel turned out to be bungling and evil worse than Sarok. Says Hummel, in the remainder of the document, plaintiff dissects defendant's answer on a line-by-line basis, including the, and Glendora says, I do not like your word dissect. It conjures up cruelty to animals. Try scrutinize. Line by line basis, lie by lie, violation by violation, just as she is doing to Hummel's a second time. This is the second time I've gone through this rotten, malodorous Hummel so-called decision in order. Because Mephisto, Bennett, Amato, Sarok, Callaghy, Satterley, Hummel wore out her copy machine. The first time I went through it, my poor copy machine was all worn out, and it was hard to read what it copied. Now she has a new one, and add $99 to her cost, along with $7 to this prodigal New York state that coerces us to tithe and return slop like Hummel's. Hummel says signature, cover letter, backer, and verification page. That's called a blue back, Hummel. Within the document, and Glendora says their lies are everywhere. Their signature is an absconding too. They scramble it as speedily as possible and then depart clandestinely, secreting themselves, and left on the paper is the memorial of their twisted letters beyond cognizable of their twisted living. Their lies are everywhere, and Hummel acquiesced. Says Hummel demands proof of defense of the counsel's authority to represent defendants, and Hummel let them go. What's that tell you? It tells you, one, they didn't have it, and two, that Hummel's covering up for them. As well as proof of their authority, that would be Sarok, Callaghy, and Satterley, to practice in Columbia County, and Hummel let them go. What does that tell you, folks? And here we are on page 14. Not only are the cheats of Callaghy and Hummel scrutinized line by line, but also phrase by phrase. You can't let them get away with a whole sentence because there's too many lies in one sentence. This is how irrationally, unreasonably, selfishly, and foolishly Hummel conducted himself. Writes Hummel. Lastly, she threatens to sue defense counsel. Well, I already have. I've sued Sarok, Satterley, and Callaghy already. And the defendants again, if they squander the time and dollars in this case. And they are already in default, and the motion for default judgment was submitted last week. We're up to Sigma. Hummel's page 3. Says Hummel, a court conference was held in this matter on March 17, 2006. Therein, the court set up a schedule for the service of defendant's motion papers and plaintiff's opposition papers. Plaintiff prepared and submitted a post-conference memorandum detailing the events of the day. In the memorandum, she reiterated her demand that defense counsel provide proof of their authority to represent defendants, and he doesn't touch it. And she also demanded that defendants appear in person and in future conferences. You know that these terrible defendants, Bennett and Amato, never appeared in court. And Hummel has the audacity to call this thing a court. The defendants never stepped their foot into court. They never faced Glendora, their accuser, eyeball to eyeball, before the judge and before the law. It is not a court, it's Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. On March the 22nd, 2006, plaintiff filed a document entitled Important Notice, Bennett Amato capitulate and return Glendora to prime time. Plaintiff indicated that she had been given the 9 p.m. Friday time and beginning on April 7, 2006. Based on the new time slot, she has withdrawn her demand that her program be restored to the 10 p.m. Friday time slot. But I've also made it clear that don't they ever touch the 9 p.m. Friday time slot without my permission. That's the law of public access. She also concludes that the new time slot is indelibly here and cannot change in 6 months. Nor 12, nor 18, nor 24, nor 30. The law says first come, first served, period. It does not say first come, first served every 6 months. Is that so abstruse? Lastly, says Hummel, plaintiff made clear that the remaining relief demanded in her complaint stands as it is, and Hummel abused his oath. We've got to find out how to make a challenge on his bond. He had to put up a bond when he became a judge to support the Constitution of the United States, and he hasn't. And so therefore he's a bond risk, and we have to get the bond insurer not to give him another bond because he's a risk. Then he can't be on the bench. Currently before the court, says Hummel, are plaintiff's motion for a default judgment and defendant's motion for summary judgment. Defendants have also requested a court order barring plaintiff from filing any future pleadings in this court without first obtaining leave of the court to file suit. Well, Hummel's failure took care of that. Who would ever want to file a case in the Hummel court? Who would ever want, after this, who would ever want to do it? And so we're up to page 16. And Hummel says plaintiff's motion for a default judgment. Plaintiff has provided the court with 2 affidavits of service which establish that both defendants were personally served with the summons and complaint on December the 22nd, 2005. And it was witnessed by a third party, James Burness. The record establishes that defendant's answer was not served until February 17th. That's 1 month and 2 days later. As such, the record clearly establishes that defendant's answer was not timely served. And Glendora says this is a glimpse of decency. But be not lulled into a false security, as was Glendora March 17, 06, on St. Patrick's Day at that conference. Talk, Hummel's page 4. Says Hummel, defendants do not challenge the timeliness of their service. They admit it. Instead, defendants contend that plaintiff's actions constitute a waiver of the late service and default. What law says so? How do you waive a motion for default judgment because you didn't mention it earlier? You just proved to me, dear Hummel, it's your statutory authority. You come up with a statute of limitations on the prosecution of a motion for default judgment. Where is the statute of limitations? And where is any statutory authority for this? Isn't that crooked, folks? Well, the court agrees and therefore must deny plaintiff's motion for default judgment. Isn't that an extended proof? An expatiation. Grounds. Glendora says conclusory, law, it is dictum, it is improper influence, it is inexperience, it is devoid of power to perform. Hummel has no power to perform. Legal, intellectual, spiritual, moral. In one sentence, and Hummel abounds. Hummel will never get away with it. It's just incredible, it's abominable, it's abhorrent, it's disgusting, it's detestable. And add to this, no hearing. That's what court is about. You don't even have a hearing? No discovery, no trial by jury, no due process of law, no Fifth Amendment, no Sixth Amendment, no 14th Amendment, and more. Have you regained consciousness, reader? Well, here's more. Hummel says, after receiving the answer, plaintiff filed a 4-volume document refuting the answer, and nowhere in this document did she discuss the timeliness of defendant's answer. Well, Hummel, you just produced a law that said I had to. Where's your statutory authority that I had to? And says Hummel, additionally, plaintiff failed to discuss the timeliness of the answer at the court conference or in her memorandum summarizing the court conference. Well, who said she had to? Hummel is so far downhill that he uses everything you do and say against you. He's desperate, but he wants to dismiss it. Why? Hummel turns all good to evil. Says Hummel, finally, defendant failed to raise the timeliness issue in her document entitled Important Notice. What law says she has to? Where is your statutory authority, Hummel? Hummel goes dearth, deficiency, insufficiency. Hummel says the timeliness issue was first raised in plaintiff's default judgment motion, which is dated March the 23rd, 2006, and that's the same day as the other 2 papers. So you see, he really doesn't have a case within his case. The 3 papers were sent out simultaneously. Saying that Glendora didn't mention them in paper 1 and paper 2 is stupid, because it was the whole thing of paper 3 was all about it. Isn't he stressed? Isn't he at a strain? Gotta dismiss this case, and he will stoop to anything to do it. Well, this is when it should have been raised. And expatiate Hummel. What is wrong with that? Says Hummel, the court concludes, and Glendora says on what grounds, that the plaintiff's actions in retaining defendant's answer for over 30 days without objecting to its timeliness constitutes a waiver to any objection to the late service of the answer. Sick, sick, sick man. I shouldn't think his mother and father would be very proud of him, or his wife or his children. And Glendora says, on what legal basis? By what law? By what statutory authority? What statute of limitations is there on moving for default judgment? Now, he throws in these computer spit-outs, and they're cases. Well, cases are not law. Judges do not make law. The New York State Legislature makes law. The Congress of the United States makes law. The judiciary branch, that's not their job to make law. They don't ever understand. Their job is to enforce law. So there's no such thing as case law. And Hummel says, as such, plaintiff's motion for a default judgment must be denied. What a cop-out. What a dirty, shameless, graceless cop-out. You prove it, Mr. Conclusory. Says Hummel, and we are on page 20. To obtain summary judgment, it is necessary that movement establishes cause of action sufficiently to warn the court as a matter of law in directing judgment in his favor. Well, Calighi failed to do this. And then he goes off, Hummel goes off into these useless quotes from cases. The proponent of a summary judgment motion must make a prima facie showing of entitlement to judgment as a matter of law. And Calighi did not, tendering sufficient evidence to eliminate any genuine material issues of fact from the case. And it never happened. That's what a summary judgment should be. Those are the requirements. But Hummel completely ignores them. The failure to make such a showing mandates denial of the motion, regardless of and Hummel should have denied it. And why didn't he? Why? And Glendora must find out. We are up to page 20. And at 1:30 p.m., what are we going to rejoice about? Let's see what the happy book says. And you get your life and your thinking organized. You are thinking life through. You are controlling outside circumstances instead of being controlled by them. So the joy is that it's summer. And the joke. It's the time of the year where Americans lay aside the Rubik's Cube and get out the ultimate challenge of all time, folding a road map. Let's take a... Going on before... Okay, let's see how long it'll take us to read pages 31 to 40. Are you running out of battery too? Upsilon, Glendora illustrates Hummel's page 5. Glendora illuminates Hummel's page 5. He says sufficiency of the opposing papers. And then he spits out some more of these washouts cases where there are just as many pros as there are cons. Glendora's papers were abundantly sufficient, and Hummel rules in favor of skimp and cheat. Do you know why? Folks, do you know why he did this? Hummel says, once that showing is made, the burden shifts to the party opposing the motion to summary judgment to come forward with evidentiary proof in admissible form to establish the evidence of material issues of fact which require a trial. And I did that. I did that supremely. Glendora did this copiously. Pre-conference, conference, post-conference, and cross-motion. Nobody could have done it more ardently. And Hummel says, in order to defeat a motion for summary judgment, the opponent must present evidentiary facts sufficient to raise a tribal issue, and averments merely stating conclusions are insufficient. Well, Glendora did raise tribal issues, and there was nothing Glendora said that was conclusory. Glendora had the facts, and Glendora had the law. The law was on Glendora's side, the facts were on Glendora's side. Unfortunately, the judge was on the crook's side. Hummel is wallowing in rhetoric and computer spitouts. Notice his reliance on cites, but never on the law. He could be quoting the law, and he should be, not this warmed over hash. Says Hummel, a party opposing summary judgment must assemble, lay bare, and reveal the evidentiary proof in admissible form to establish a tribal issue of fact. Ho hum, ho hum, ho Hummel, ho Hummel. opposing the affidavit of an attorney without personal knowledge of the facts has no probative value and should be disregarded. Well, Callaghan has no personal knowledge of the facts. Hummel has no personal knowledge of the facts. Glendora has personal knowledge of the facts, and she's the only one. Hummel is a copycat, just as he copies these computer worthless spitouts. He copies Callaghan's papers. Hummel came up with only one site, and an aberrant one at that, for ridiculous wave of default judgment. He didn't have a whole lot of sites for that, because it just doesn't happen. It hasn't happened before, and it mustn't happen again. Summary judgment is a drastic remedy, says Hummel, and should not be granted when there is any doubt as to the existence of a triable issue. Then why did you do it, Hummel? Says Hummel, the focus is upon issue finding and issue answering, and on evidence must be viewed in a light most favorable to the party who made the motion. Then why did you do it, Hummel? Why did you do it? These arguments are against you, they're not for you, says Hummel. In their motion papers, defendants relied upon a United States District Court. Well, Hummel, hack, he is stalling for time. Glendora makes an example of Hummel's page 6. Hummel says a court case which held that Cablevision's time slot allocation system was not discriminatory and actually furthered the intent of the Cable Act. See Poor Maroney versus Cablevision and Bernas versus Cablevision. I know the whole background behind that. And Hummel doesn't want to know the whole background behind it. He just wants to abscond with this little piece, entirely out of context. Is this a law? No, it is not, Hummel. What is it? It is another bad decision by a bad judge. Was Hummel there? Does Hummel have any personal knowledge? No. This was written by Arthur Spatz's law clerk, Jeffrey Amato, related to Glendora's defendant, Alyssa Amato, who works for Cablevision. You've been snickered, Hummel, but you don't care. The Maroney court held that the changes that Cablevision wishes to implement appear to be neutral with regard to content. What's that mean? Do you have any idea what that means? I don't. You explain it, Hummel. Regulations that are content neutral are not prohibited. Glendora has proved her point long ago about editorial control, and Hummel chooses to abscond again. What is editorial control? It's the cable operator blocking the message that Glendora, public access producer, wants to get to you, public access viewer. And anything they do to block that is editorial control. And that's, you can't be so dumb, Hummel, that you don't understand that. Editorial control is keeping Glendora's viewers from getting the message that she wants them to get, whether Cheater, Bennett, and Amato do it by long lines overnight, by public access producers, or by blacking out, or by jumping up and down on her videotapes, or by losing her tapes, or by changing her time slot, which is hers the rest of her life. That is editorial control, because it keeps Glendora's message from getting to you. But Hummel chooses to steal off and to secrete himself, and Hummel goes unilateral, even as did Spat, whose law clerk Amato wrote this sellout. Where does this come from, Hummel? It comes from a bad man who called Cablevision's lawyer from the courtroom. This decision that Hummel quotes came from a bad man named Arthur Spatt, who called Cablevision's lawyer from the courtroom with a courtroom full of people, and he says to Cablevision's lawyer, "How's your father?" What does that tell you? Plus we have the collusion of Amato. And that's where this decision came from, Hummel. And you have no personal knowledge. You are not fit to rule on a summary judgment. And did you have a hearing? Did you listen to us? How's your father? The man should have recused from day one. But Cablevision's money had been paid, and Arthur Spatt had to deliver the goods. This was the output of a judge who has been sued at least 3 times, Arthur D. Spatt. This is the man who Glendora alleges probably lied the most and probably had the most to do with dropping Glendora from 10 p.m. to 4 p.m. and cutting her audience 4/5. I strongly suspect that Spatt had a big call, and maybe the initial call in that matter. Hummel is duped. This is the man, Arthur D. Spatt, who double-crossed the United States of America, New York State, and the municipalities, and eschewed first come, first serve, no cable operator editorial control, no discriminatory, no limit and prohibit, and no lottery. Arthur Spatt didn't even rule on the lottery. He didn't even rule on first come, first serve. He's a paid political announcement, and so is Hummel. Hummel is a fake. The only ones, Bennett, Amato, Spatt, Callaghan, Sarok, Satterley, Hummel, fool is themselves. Hummel's 9 pages are an archetype, just like Spatt's. We see them all over the courts. Earn an honest living, you people. Says Hummel, defendants also argue that plaintiff's failure to establish a claim under the censorship editorial control provision of the Cable Act. So he quotes the defendants over and over again, but he never quotes Glendora. There was no such failure, Glendora says. This is a lie, and Hummel falls for it. And Hummel says precludes her from pursuing a successful claim under New York Public Service Law, Section 229, Glendora versus Marshall. This is another lie. Glendora versus Marshall is another lie. The case is Glendora versus Malone. Malone paid a liar for hire in Albany named Ben Wiles, another liar for hire, to keep calling the case Glendora versus Marshall until the clerks got confused and started making mistakes on it. But he did not fully succeed because Glendora versus Malone is still extant. It's still in the books. The liar for hire, Albany lawyer, just lost his job, and Malone lost all of his cable TV stations to AT&T. Hummel, you're going to lose too. Hummel is snickered. He had his choice. Go with the truth or go with the lies. Why did he go with the lies? Just like Spatt, Hummel is captured. Says Hummel, therein the court held that plaintiff censorship claims under New York's public service law must be dismissed because defendant had exercised no editorial control over plaintiff's show. Has he proven that? Hold it therein. Therein is non sequitur. Do you see anything in what Hummel said on page 6 that justifies his leap to therein in this last sentence here? No, not one thing is there in what he says above justifies his leap to this therein. This is a hoax. It is incompetent, inept, and impotent. And this is fraud. It is fraud on the court, by the court, and for the court. This is so unbelievable. We are on page 30 out of 100. Hummel says, finally, defendants point out that challenges under 9 New York Code Rules and Regulations 595.4 are to be initially brought before the Public Service Commission of the State of New York. Hummel is unilateral. First of all, it isn't 9 New York Code Rules and Regulations 595.4. It's 16 New York Code Rules and Regulations 895.4. Hummel points out what Callaghan told him to say. He repeats Callaghan's lie that defendants, quote unquote, point out. Well, the defendants are Bennett and Amato. They didn't do a thing in this lawsuit. It's all Callaghan, Sawrock, and Sadley. All the liar for hire crowd. And it's another lie that defendants did this, defendants did that. They did not. And Hummel falls for the lie. They don't know the first thing about the law. Well, neither does Hummel. Glendora points out in her very accurate and detached correction of the record. First of all, it is not 9 New York Code Rules and Regulations 595.4. It is 16 New York Code Rules and Regulations 895.4. This is how sharp copycat Hummel gets. Get the record straight. Glendora beat Callaghan for all time in the United States District Court, White Plains, and in the United States Court of Appeals, Manhattan, that Glendora has a private right of action. And you're too superficial. And you're too bent on your prejudice to look up the law. This is the case that Callaghan so disgracefully lost, and Cablevision had to put a chat with Glendora back on TV in Nassau County. One of the many cases that he was not able to buy out the court. Therein, quote unquote, Hummel has violated 18 U.S. Code Section 1001, lying, stealing, cheating, and covering up. And that's fine in prison. And I will go to federal court and I will ask for that. It's a misrepresentation of material fact. Hummel is caught. Glendora is pleased that she caught him. And says Hummel, they also state that the Public Service Commission has reviewed Cablevision's time and allocation system and determined that the procedures comply with the first come, first served, non-discriminatory basis. And Glendora says, and what did Glendora say? Glendora elucidated at great length exactly how much this meant, and that Flynn and his gang of gangsters up there in the Public Service Commission in Albany paid off by Cablevision, and they've all been sued, and they've all been defended by Spitzer, who has been sued. How's your father? Hummel is very skillful at incriminating himself as to prejudice, as to one side, as to improper influence. And we are on page 32 out of 100. Joke. Mommy, is it true what the Bible says, that we come from dust and return to dust? And Mama said, certainly. And the little girl says, I looked under the couch and somebody's coming or going. Here's a good word. Abstain. Abstain from falling into their trap. So here we are, folks. This is a great weekend to do this. This is 4th of July weekend, and I believe in the Declaration of Independence. Christian Hummel doesn't. Nor does Callaghan, nor does Sawrock, nor does Sadley, nor does Bennett, nor does Amato. The defendants are Bennett and Amato. They have shown nothing. He keeps saying the defendants have shown this. That's a big lie. Bennett and Amato didn't show anything. They don't know anything. Callaghan, liar for hire, said, paid or unpaid, has shown nothing of the kind. Hummel is over his head in a fix. Now, defendants have conclusively established that the time slot allocation system is content neutral. Glendora says this is a lie. They have not. And what does content neutral mean? Conclusory is not conclusively. It's not conclusively. It's conclusory. Hummel does not prove his allegation. Glendora showed that Bennett Amato obviously exercised editorial control. They kept you from getting the message I wanted you to get. But Hummel does not even mention what Glendora said. Hummel knows nothing about public access, nor does his bedfellow Callaghan. And he's talking about you can't have summary judgment without personal knowledge. Hummel has never seen Bennett Amato eyeball to eyeball. He has heard no testimony, no witnesses have been sworn, no evidence has been presented. His knowledge of courts and of public access equal each other. 0. Hummel says non-discriminatory and that it does not violate the first come, first served, a non-discriminatory requirement under state regulation. I cannot believe this man. A, that is dictum. B, it is prejudice. C, it's a fix. Hummel says defendants have also established that they exercise absolutely no editorial control over plaintiff program. Glendora says defendants established nothing. They never appeared in court. Defendants are Bennett and Amato. This shows you how far Hummel has ambaged from the truth. Callaghan showed no such thing. Hummel is all dictum, all conclusory, no fact, no law, and no court. Glendora wants her $315 back. And Hummel says an opposition plaintiff has failed to raise any material tribal issues of fact. And Glendora says, I'm going after you under Federal Criminal Code 18, Section 1001, lying and cheating. And you have shown prejudice, Glendora says to Hummel, and Glendora says to Hummel that is dictum. Glendora raised multitudes, more facts and laws than Callaghan ever raised, truth and allegiance to the law. There had to be improper influence because no judge could be this bad. There had to be improper influence. No judge could be this bad as Christian F. Hummel. Hummel says, notably plaintiff has failed to provide any relevant case law refuting defendant's citations. Well, just let me tell you again, Christian Hummel, there is no such thing as case law. Cases is another decision by a bad judge. Another bad decision by a bad judge. Judges do not make law. Congress makes laws. The New York legislature makes law. There is no such thing as case law. This shows you how far gone Hummel is and how desperate he is to make up a phony decision in favor of the devil. And judges like Hummel do not enforce law. That's their job. Their job is not to make law. Their job is to enforce law. Judges like Hummel just spit rhetoric and conclusories and dictum. And Hummel says, also plaintiff has failed to even attempt to distinguish the clearly relevant cases relied upon by defendants. There again, defendants are not anybody but Bennett and Amato, and they don't know beans. It is Callaghan who wrote all this rot, and it is Hummel who slurps it up for reasons unknown. What in the world does he mean? Explain yourself. And finally, says Hummel, plaintiff has not cited any instance where editorial control over a program was interfered with by defendants, and this is an out-and-out lie. I only wrote something like 80 pages. My cross motion was only about 80 pages, refuting everything that Callaghan lied about, but Hummel chooses not to see it. I feel sorry for his mother and father. You know, they put out a lot of money to put him through law school, and look what he turned out to be, a rogue. Glendora says A, lie. B, she wrote pages and pages. C, there has to be improper influence. No judge could be this bad as Christian F. Hummel. Page 37. As such, defendant's motion for summary judgment must be granted. Don't you know, Hummel, that pro se civil rights cases cannot be summarily dismissed? You took away my discovery. You took away my demand for jury trial. You took away my day in court. This is not all that Hummel fails to know. Quote, as such, unquote, is non sequitur. Hummel's paper is vague, adumbral, dishonest, and dishonorable. Says Hummel, the remaining issues warrant brief mention. The court declines to require defense counsel to proffer proof of their authority to practice in Columbia County. What's that tell you, folks? They don't have it! And what else does it tell you? Hummel's covering up for them. And this is Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 1001, cover-up. One sword says, what does this tell you? They don't have it, and Hummel absconded without prosecuting, and how is a conspirator a state actor under Title 47 of the United States Code, 1983 Civil Rights? He is going to be taken to court, federal court, on this, because he is a state actor. He does work for the state of New York, and also Section 1985, which is conspiracy. He conspired with these thieves and liars and cheats. Robert Callaghy, Walter Swarock, Sadly Stevens, Burke, Diane Bennett, Alyssa Amato, Arthur D. Spat's law clerk, Jeffrey Amato. He conspired with these lawbreakers. Proof of their authority to represent defendants. And he will not provide proof of their authority to represent defendants. Now that's demanded. They have to produce it, and Hummel has to make them produce it. What does the law tell you? Well, they don't have it. And Hummel is covering up for them. He countenances, he helps, he abets, he seconds, he sustains, and he supports. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, the might of discovery rules 26 and 37, when I take Hummel to the federal court, they all await Christian F. Hummel, candidate for lead defendant, Omnibus 28. Says Hummel, additionally, the court determines that plaintiff's contention that defendants are operating an illegal lottery is clearly without merit. How can you do that? Is he on dope? Is he drunk? Is he sold? Is he bought? Is he sick? Is he stupid? Christian F. Hummel, where is your alleged documentation? You prove without merit. It's conclusory. It is prima facie. Bennett Amato are operating a lottery, a game of chance. Their super cool random number selection is a game of chance. It's a lottery. This poor man, I really feel sorry for him. We really have to pray for him. It is prima facie. Hummel covers up, countenances, helps, abets, seconds, supports, and sustains. 39. He augments the criminal code, United States Code, Title 18, Section 1001. He connives at, he covers up material fact, and Glendora would not want to be humbled at this point. Hummel, the court declines to bar the plaintiff from filing any future pleadings in this court. No, Hummel's 8 pages did that for him. Who would ever want to file in the Hummel court again? I have no confidence in it. Glendora versus Bennett Amato can be brought in many other courts, and Hummel did not rule on the merits, and his conclusories undid him. Hummel failed. His 8 pages are not equal to the requirement. Folks, it is hack. It is nothing but hack. Now here's a footnote by Hummel. An additional reason for granting defendant's motion also exists. Defendants are Bennett and Amato. They didn't make a motion. Callagy made it. Why? Any causes of action warranted under the state and federal statutes and regulations cited by the plaintiff would exist solely against Cablevision as the cable operator, television company, and entity responsible for the time and allocation system at issue. Well, Glendora says White Plains didn't say that, okay? Glendora sued Cecilia Masterilli, who is an analogous employee for Cablevision in Westchester, the analog for Bennett and Amato in Nassau County. And White Plains didn't say I had to sue Cablevision. They granted me $5,020. So you see, Hummel is totally wrong about that. And if this is so important, why is it relegated to a footnote? Integrated legal papers without disjointed footnotes require integrity, and that's why Hummel can't write an integrated paper. Well, the answer to Hummel's juvenile allocution is that the White Plains City Court made Cecilia Masterilli, diabolical Westchester counterpart to Nassau, Bennett, and Amato, pay Glendora $5,020. And this takes care of that. We're up to Psi, the devil's trident. Glendora, obloquy against Hummel, page 8. His page 8. So he says defendant's request in this regard was overly broad and he's not going to let them get by with not letting Glendora file in his court anymore. Well, Hummel took care of that. I don't want to file in his court anymore. Accordingly, Hummel says, it is hereby ordered that plaintiff's motion for default judgment is hereby denied, and it is further, and this is, Glendora says, a vast intellectual and moral abyss, a void. I'm talking about Christian F. Hummel, so-called acting justice, Supreme Court, County of Columbia, State of New York. Ordered that the defendant's motion for summary judgment is hereby granted in its entirety, and it is further. And Glendora says that's immeasurable corruption. Pro se civil rights cases cannot be summarily dismissed. A, no acumen, no acuity, no intellectual, no practical keenness. Blumberg form, not commensurate with the requirement. Failure to fulfill the proposed end. Does not meet the need. Unskilled, unversed. We're on page 41. And Hummel says, ordered that defendants request that plaintiff be barred from filing any future pleadings in this court without first obtaining leave of court is hereby denied. Callagy cheers. Maybe Cablevision will go back to paying him, and he won't have to work for zero anymore. Hummel, this shall constitute the decision and order of the court. The original of this decision and order is forwarded to counsel for the defendants, who is directed to enter the decision and order without notice and to serve plaintiff with a copy of this decision and order with notices of entry. Glendora says that's backwoods. I've never heard of this. Who ever heard of such a thing? It's as unprofessional as everything else that Hummel has done in these 9 pages. It's dated May the 17th, 2005, and I want you to see his signature. His signature tells you a great deal about his state of mind. The Christian is a blur. What does the scribble tell you about the mental state? What was his motive, folks? Why did he do it? Glendora knows what is next. Glendora wants her $315 money back. This is inept. It is amateurish. Acting, quote unquote, is right. And now we go to Omega and Hummel's page 9, and he says, papers considered. Plaintiff's 4-volume response to defendant's answer, dated February the 27th, 2006, and all annexed exhibits. Plaintiff's post-conference memoranda, dated March the 18th, 2006. Plaintiff's important notice, dated March the 22nd, 2006. Plaintiff's notice of motion and affirmation in support of default judgment motion, dated March the 23rd, 2006, and all annexed exhibits. Defendant's notice of motion, dated March the 31st, 2006, and all annexed exhibits. Affidavit of Robert M. Callaghy, Esquire, sworn to on March the 31st, 2006. Affidavit of Diane Bennett, sworn to on March the 31st, 2006. You notice he let him get by without any affidavit from Melissa Amato. It's a nothing. It's a complete washout. Defendant's memorandum of law, dated March the 31st, 2006. Plaintiff's memorandum, dated April the 10th, 2006. Plaintiff's reply to defense counsel's April 10 letter, dated April the 17th, 2006. Plaintiff's reply, dated May the 9th, 2006. So what went wrong? No affidavit by Amato, no appearance or in personam by Bennett and Amato, no interception of the cogent points. Made by Glendora. Hummel never mentions the same. It is all Callaghy. Hummel lies, defendants, quote unquote, did so and so. Bennett Amato did nothing. Callaghy did it all. Make an honest living, Hummel. Make an honest living. Make an honest and an honorable living. Take a look at the record. Res ipsa loquitur, things speak for themselves. And we are up to page 45 out of 100. Now I want you to look at the record, okay? This is my motion. So now we just had a little with some white grape juice by Welch's. You know the story about Mr. Welch? He didn't like the grape juice that was being handed out in the churches at communion time. He says, I'm going to go and grow a good grape. And we're going to have good grape juice. So he went to western New York, Westfield, about 60, 70 miles west of Buffalo. And he went out there and he grew all these Concord grapes. And he's right. It's a good grape juice. Okay. It is getting more and more difficult for us, too, to sport the state of New York in the style to which it has become accustomed. The famous author was asked, what do you consider your greatest work of fiction? And he said, my income tax form. Make gratitude a habit. Thank you, God, for some blue sky. Thank you, God, for these beautiful trees and how happy they are with all the rain you've given them. Thank you, God, for this greenery. Thank you, God, for this beautiful world. And we must take that plant in. This is too much sun for it. It's an avocado tree. All right, let's try to go 67 to 80. And then we only have one more section after that. This is Christian F. Hummel, so-called Justice of the Supreme Court, County of Columbia, State of New York. The case is Glendora versus Bennett, Amato. They took Glendora's program from 10 p.m. to 4 p.m. and this violated 5 public access rules. Plus, they committed a crime against the state of New York called a lottery, a game of chance. And Glendora is opposing the paper of a kid, Walter A. Sarok, who won't be at Satterley in a month or so. He is an interim, a sojourner of a year or so. Call Satterley and ask for Strickland, whose kid papers Glendora opposed with burning heat. Well, she's gone. The same with McQuaid. You will hear, no longer with the company. And Sarok says that defendants Diane Bennett and Alyssa Amato respectfully submit this memorandum of law in opposition to Glendora's frivolous motion for re-argument. Okay. He never mentions, one, that Glendora moved for relief from order. And it's not respectfully submitted, folks, when you lie. And Glendora's motion is hardly frivolous. That's Sarok's lie number 3. And number 4, re-argument. It was relief from order. So there, in the first paragraph, which is 1 sentence long, he told 4 lies. That's about average. Line number 5, Glendora's frivolous motion, in effect, is a 60-page, it was 70 pages, diatribe, that's line number 6, featuring a series of ad hominem attacks against the court and the parties and attorneys herein. And instead of showing, as required, that the court overlooked or misapprehended relevant facts or law in granting defendant's motion, well, this is lie number 9. Glendora showed this affluently, and this is Sarok's lie number 10, and Callaghan's, that the motion to dismiss Glendora's complaint, and Glendora maliciously, that's lie number 11, and brazenly, that's line number 12, and without basis, that's line number 13, claims that Judge Hummel was bribed, that's line number 14, I didn't say he was bribed, I said there was improper influence, into rendering the May 17, 2006 decision in order that dismisses Glendora's complaint. She says on venomously, that's line number 14, to aver that Judge Hummel is dishonest, amateurish, unchristian, and threatens him with suit. And Glendora says, save it, Sarok. He's on your side. The law is on our side, the facts are on our side, but the judge is on your side. And you don't really have to do a thing, Sarah, because we all know that Hummel's going to rule in your favor. Now, rule is a cute word because what Hummel does really doesn't reach the status of rule. However, nothing, says Sarah, can change the fact that the decision was properly decided. It was improperly decided. And so in his first page, Sarok is told 15 lines. Why do I even bother with this? She cannot establish that defendants violated any state or federal laws by changing her time slot from 10 p.m. to 4 p.m. Out and out lie. I only wrote 80 pages showing that, and then another 70, and now another 100. That's just an out and out lie. That's what these lawyers do. They just lie in plain daylight. And the judges along with them. Further, the decision, says Sarak, rightly holds that state and federal laws regulating cable operators afford no basis for Glendora to make a claim against Cablevision employees such as Ms. Bennett. Well, Glendora made a claim against Cablevision employee Miss Masterilli in the White Plains court and won $5,020, which Sarak had to pay. So you just see how they lie? They have no regard for the truth at all. They have no regard for honor or for honesty. They're totally demoralized. They're totally self-surrendered device. I'm talking about lawyers and judges. They just lie in broad daylight. And they all lie together. Hummel and Sarak and Satterley and Callaghan. In short, Glendora has presented no relevant facts of law. And this is his line number 20. I presented page after page after page after page, 80 pages, 70 pages, 100 pages. And indeed, she has filed a motion for no other purpose than to attack the integrity of this court. Well, this court has no integrity. There isn't any. And I'm talking about Christian F. Hummel, Supreme Court, County of Columbia, State of New York. And neither does Sora, or Callaghan, or Satterley, or Stevens, Burke, and Burke, or Bennett, or Amata. They have no integrity. And now we're up to 21 lies by Sarak. Glendora thanks Sarak for proving her case against him in federal court. And that charge is 18 United States Code Section 1001, which is criminal code, lying, stealing, cheating, and misrepresenting. Trickery. Sarak has nothing to be anxious about. Hummel is going to rule in his favor. It is a foregone conclusion. And this is page 69. It says Hummel, Glendora's motion for a re-argument must be denied. And Glendora puts a caret in there and says must not be denied. And he goes through the same thing that Hummel does and states that a motion for leave to re-argue is governed by CPLR 2221. D. Well, in that paragraph, there are about 10 lies, and he spits out these cases, and there again, cases are not law. Judges do not make law. Law is made by the New York State Legislature and the Congress of the United States. So you see how Sarak and Hummel sleep in the same bed. Sarak owes Glendora $107 for a new copy machine. He wore out her other one. Glendora did her prosecution in colossal proportions. The failure came with this judge's abuse of the courts, and I'm talking about Christian F. Hummel. He put the courts to bad use. He misapplied. Why? We don't know yet. But in federal court, with the might of the rules, discovery 26 to 37. We will start our quest to find out why. Was it nescience? Was he just stupid? Was it inexperience? Was it a twist in his personality? Was it prejudice? Was he improperly influenced? Inter alia. First we have the vicious law-breaking of Bennett and Amato. Next comes the lying and cover-up of Sarok, Callaghy, and Sadley. Next is the abuse of the courts by Hummel. And the abstract of Hummel's aberrations is dishonesty, dishonor, and unjustness. The next step up is federal court, state actor, civil rights, conspiracy, Title 42 United States Code, Section 1983 and 1985. Criminal Code 18 U.S. Code, Section 1001. 5th, 14th discovery, and Rules 26 to 37. And he's violated about 6 other criminal statutes. Come on, yes. Title 18 U.S. Code sections. He's violated about 6 criminal laws. Glendora should not bother answering a paper by Sarok, who has no standing in this court and who has no authority to represent Glendora's lawbreakers, civil and criminal, Bennett and Amato. Sarok has no being in Columbia Supreme Court. He has no proof of authority that he's representing Bennett, and the court colluded with him on that, and he has no proof that he's qualified to practice in Columbia County, and the court, Hummel, colluded with him on that. Sarok keeps calling it a motion for argument. It's a motion for relief from order. Sarok's overflow of cites is archaic. He doesn't even tell you what years they are, and he goes on page after page with these useless, washed out cites that are taken out of context and don't even say what the case is really about. And where one washes out the other, there's just as many cons as there are pros. And it's all penumbra, it's no core, it's all bulk and no weight. Now we're up to Theta Theta, and we're on page 72. Glendora had her choice. Just sue Hummel forthwith. Don't give him the benefit of a motion for relief of order. But said motion served well as an attachment to the notice of appeal and to ensuring its place in the record early. And it had in place a complaint on judicial disability and misconduct with the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct, which is mandated by the Constitution of New York State to protect you from bad judges, like Hummel. Christian F. Hummel, County of Columbia, State of New York, who deliberately, knowingly, willfully, and evilly chose to be bad. And these 73 pages plus will be attachment 2 to the notice of appeal, to the record in the Supreme Court, County of Columbia, and to the New York State Court of Appeals, the Judith K. Court. And both of them will be integrated in her federal complaint against Hummel, Sarok, Callaghy, Sadley, Bennett, Amato. Maybe she will addend Cablevision, Charles Dolan, James Dolan, Matthew Deal, Thomas Garger, and Charles Foreman. Further, the expose will be in the records and in the museum forever. Glendora found a pen that is easy writing. It's a metallic pen. The ink is metallic. Glendora found a pen that is easy writing, legible, and does not bleed. How allegorical this is. She continues on Sarok's page 4. Says Sarok, Glendora's complaint was properly dismissed. And Glendora says it was improperly dismissed. Glendora has not shown that their presidents were misapprehended and her claims properly were dismissed. Well, there's time out now for a disjointed footnote. And if Glendora does her job and prays fiercely For Sarok, he will be blessed with integrity. He will be empowered to write integral papers and without disjointed thinking. In his footnote, Sarok says the decision rightly holds that no cause of action exists against the employees of a cable operator for their actions in connections with public access programming. Well, stupid, Sarok, what did White Plains City Court rule? Didn't they rule against you on that? Didn't they hold just the opposite? Didn't they hold just the opposite, that a cause of action does exist against the employees of a cable operator? Didn't they make you pay $5,020, Mr. Liar? You see how they lie, folks? You see how they lie in broad daylight? They just lie. One would think Sarok would not forget this, since he had to pay Glendora $5,020. Hummel also likes to forget the big material fact. Section 531E of the Cable Act, that's codified as Title 47, United States Code, Sections 521 et sequitur. Anyway, that provides in pertinent part, a cable operator should not exercise any editorial control over any public educational or governmental use of channel capacity provided pursuant to this section. In other words, a cable operator cannot exercise editorial control over public access. Similarly, Section 229 of the New York Public Service Law provides in relevant part that no cable television company may prohibit or limit any program or class or type of program. That would be public access. And New York Public Service Laws 229.1, 229.3, and, well, that's the same one, excuse me. And lastly, that Title 16 New York Code 895.4, it says that channel time shall be scheduled on the public access channel by the entity responsible for the administration thereof on a first-come, first-served, non-discriminatory basis. So these are all the laws that Bennett Amato broke, and these are all the laws that Sarok and Satterley and Callaghy lied about, and these are all of the laws that Hummel turned his back on and double-crossed the United States and the Empire State. This is good work, Sarok. You put down the laws. If you know the laws, then how come you don't adhere to them? Why is it you blasphemize the law? And why is it you quote the relevant law in a footnote? You are abstinent in your young age, as your signature proves. And then he says Glendora should be sanctioned, and he says and she should not be allowed to use this court again. And Glendora says, Sarok goes Rip Van Winkle. He's been asleep for 20 years, and he's in Sleepy Hollow territory. He's asleep. Hummel has already ruled on his pages 7 and 8. He's also denied their motion to keep me from filing any more suits in the Hummel court. Hummel denied that. Sarok forgets about it. Hummel said they were overly broad. Sarok habitually asks courts for the same relief twice, and that's verboten. See the 4-volume record, the White Plains City Court, in the phalanges of the Hudson Court. I sent it to them. That's the 4-volume package that I sent to them. It is res judicata, Sarok. It is collateral estoppel. Glendora is not barred from what a Gestapo thing that is. Is that American? Anyway, who would want to file another lawsuit in the Hummel court? And then he says that the Supreme Court of the United States wouldn't let Glendora file any more informa pauperis lawsuits. And Justice Kennedy of the United States Supreme Court dissented. He knew that that was dis-American. And he knew it was dirty work against the USA by the other 8 Supreme Court justices of the United States. and Porzio lost 100%. He was a bad landlord and still is in White Plains. And his lawyer did not file a notice of entry of the order by the judge within 60 days. That means that it turned out to be a nullity. That Porzio never got what he thought he got in court, never went to court, or never got what he went to court for and paid $17,000 for. It was a nullity because it was never entered. And Rosanna Washington, the dumb clown who made such an order in this landlord-tenant case, Rosanna Washington, was scraped from the bench. She's no longer a judge in the White Plains City Court. And I take full credit for that. I exposed her on television every week for 26 weeks, what she had done. And she's no longer there. Glendora has boycotted the Second Circuit, hopelessly corrupt, depraved, and failure. She has caught them in over 330 second cheats. It took them 3 years to process a judicial misconduct complaint against George Bush's cousin, John Walker, who is the chief judge of the Second Circuit in New York City Federal Appeals Court. He's George Bush's cousin. And I filed a judicial misconduct and disability complaint against John Walker, George Bush's cousin. It took them 3 years to get to it. And that's their latest treat. They were sued for their preoccupation and prepossession of fraud, the same suit that Sarok, Caligari, Sadly darkened the USA. They are in default, too wrong and too cowardly to defend. Page 77. Sarok openly and ignorantly defies the Second Circuit, which is Hummel's court, by the way. Unpublished opinions are not to be cited. The Second Circuit says do not cite unpublished opinions. So who cites an unpublished opinion? Dumb Sarok. Sarok goes into more repetition. It does not make sense. It is not clear. It is not understandable. Cablevision has nothing to do with broadcast. That's what ABC, NBC, and CBS do. They broadcast. Cable operators send their signal through a coaxial cable. There is no such order that says the suit was about Cablevision's running away, petrified from showing shareholder Glendora the books, records, minutes, and shareholders' lists. Terrorized by their violations of New York State Business Corporation Law and Delaware Business Corporation Law, or Delaware Law of Corporations, excuse me. It gave birth to Glendora's attainment, inducing the Securities Exchange Commission to initiate an investigation of Cablevision. And that investigation is now going on. And we all know the failure and flop of de Blasio, who was forced to step down from being a judge or a justice of the Supreme Court, County of Westchester. And we all know that he has just sort of disappeared. He was scraped off the bench as a judge. He went to work as a lawyer for somebody else. And now he's not there anymore. And this is just what we want to have happen to Hummel. We are on page 80. And we have petitioned the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct to do that, to protect the public from Christian F. Hummel. The record speaks differently. Sarok, as ever, extrapolates his intemperance on others. He fails as ever, like Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. He looks in the mirror and he knows whom he knows whom he really sees. Now he says that Glendora is trying to harass Hummel. I don't care about harassing Hummel. Just get up and sue him. Sue him for his dis-Americanism, that he doesn't pay any attention to America's traditions or interests or ideals. Make a public record of it. TV and the internet and a museum. We were up to page 81, and that's next to the last section. I would like to draw your attention to this very fine newspaper article by the Journal American. Oh, no, not the Journal American, whatever it's called in Westchester, the Gannett newspaper. And they give Susan credit and so many other people credit for these feral-faline cats. Susan goes and she traps the cats it's a very nice trap, and then her husband takes them to the veterinarian and has all their medical problems resolved. And then Susan has them spayed and neutered, and then Susan brings them back to where they were. And she goes on ad infinitum, and of course many times there's kittens involved. Susan rescued 8 little kittens who were in a metal shack and cardboard boxes just about to expire. She got there and she rescued them. So thank you for this article. And thank you all you people for helping the kitties. I know that every spare penny I get goes down there to help these cats. And I've sort of given up my other charities and taken this one on just singly. So we have to help these kitties, and we are helping them. And thank you, Susan Hayward, a nurse in Peekskill, and the signer for a chat with Glendora in the Peekskill system. Thank you, Susan, for helping the kitties. Poor kitties. .com, the poor kitties. You have a home.com, you have a person, and every one of these kitties needs a home and a person. The mother-in-law says that her son-in-law was at least honest as to his 1040 income tax form. He reported that half of his income was unearned. Let's see what the Happy Book says. And this brings to a close this Happy Book. Oh no, I'm not through reading it. Let's go back a few pages. Let's go back to page 39. The Happy Book has all different colored pages. Yellow, orange, pink, blue. It says, you keep yourself aware of what you want in life and what you don't want. You know what you don't want, and you know what you want. You want able justices, and you want accuracy and Americanism in the courts, and you know what you don't want. Liars and cheaters and thieves like Hummel, like Sarah, like Callaghan, like Sadley, Stevens, Burke, and Burke. like Bennett and Amato, like Spat and his law clerk Jeffrey Amato, and like William Flynn and the Public Service Commission. You want real people in the courts, real godlike people, and I want them there too. And they really don't want to be that way. They want to be good people. What's the matter with them? They just don't have the strength. Pray for them. Send them pulses of strength so that they can rise above all this and lift all the other ones with them above all this. We're going to take a break and then we'll come back and we'll finish the last 20 pages of Glendora versus Bennett and Amato, Supreme Court, County of Columbia, adulterated by Christian F. Hummel. You know, everybody, the IRS reported that last April there were 60 million income tax forms filed, and that doesn't count the ones that were chiseled. Okay, we have to read to pages 81 to 98. Sorok's page 4. He doesn't say what Glendora said. He says Glendora says so-and-so, but she didn't say that. And what he writes is so sick, and it's so adulent. You know, he gets on his knees to Christian F. Hummel, because they're both serving the devil. And Sorok says Glendora's malice and contempt, however, do not change the fact that the decision was properly decided. Malice and contempt, says Glendora, accurately describe the conduct of Bennett, Amato, their accessories, Sorok, Callaghy, Satterley, and Hummel. This is something. He calls it Maroney versus CSC Holdings Incorporated. Maroney didn't sue CSC Holdings Incorporated. He sued Cablevision. So this is a big lie. This is just like Ben Wiles in Albany, saying the name of the lawsuit was Glendora versus Marshall, when it was Glendora versus Malone. And Malone paid Ben Wiles to mix up the record that way, to get his name out of it. Folks, I feel so sorry for these people. Here they could be doing great and wonderful things, and they are stooping and groveling so low. And about Sorok, it's a big soul selling, and here he is at a young age, and Sorok has very little of his soul that's unsold. It's repetitious as usual. Oh, a little kitty down here at my feet, so cute. Glendora has already refuted that for all time. And Flynn and his toy and his tax burden accomplices, the New York State Public Service Commission, has already been sued. And Spat is already in the Second Circuit. And Spat has been sued 3 times. And this was written by the man who called Cablevision, in-house lawyer, Charles Former, and said, "How's your father?" Is it any surprise that Spat ruled in favor of Cablevision? It's no surprise. Could you come up and show people your pretty face? Because they like to see you. You know, you have lots of fans. You have more fans than anybody. You're a much beloved kitty all over. too hot up here, isn't it? You have to stay in the shade. Yes, this was written by a man who called Cablevision's in-house lawyer and said, "How's your father?" And this was all in front of Maroney and Burness, who also sued Cablevision. Actually, it was written by Spat's law clerk Jeffrey Amato, related to Glendora's defendant, Alyssa Amato. Here we are suing Alyssa Amato for violating public access. And do you think that Spat's law clerk is going to rule against Alyssa Amato? Glendora has affluently pointed out the sham, and Sarok has nothing to reply, and copycat Hummel swallows it whole, and the truth is out. This and Glendora's synopsis of editorial control, violative lottery, and their other dastardly deeds has been fully and plenarily proffered all over the place. And Sarok bombs again. Sarok says, in fact, this court, meaning Hummel, held that Cablevision's new system, meaning SPAT, Cablevision's new system appears to be much better by presenting access producers who cannot stand in line overnight waiting for a time slot. As if they ever cared. As if they ever cared, Cablevision ever cared about the poor producer standing out there in the snow and the ice all night long. We all know the rotten slime behind this Sarok. We all know that Sarok is repetitious, 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 repetitious. And we all know that what he says is frivolous. The court found that the new system furthers the intent of the Cable Act by providing the widest possible diversity of information sources and services to the public. It's just the opposite. And in the past, they prevented that. And when they put a chat with Glendora down from 10 p.m. to 4 p.m., they cut the public by 4/5. So this is all so phony and so recondite. It does just the opposite. Liar for hire, one after the other, like dominoes. Who are the liars for hire? Sarok, Callaghy, Sadley, Stevens, Burke and Burke, Hummel, Bennett, Amato, Spat, Spat's law clerk Amato, the Public Service Commission. Stop for a disjointed footnote. Because Sarok does not have the integrity to write an integrated paper, Further, the court properly dismissed Glendora's suit, her state law claims, given that a failure to sustain a cause of action under the Cable Act requires that claims under the New York Public Service Law 229 also be dismissed. I'd like to know who says. Who says? Again, it's a lie. Glendora versus Marshall. It's Glendora versus Malone. John Malone, who paid for Ben Wiles to mix up the record and get his name out of it and put in the name of the guy who works for him. That's how dirty Malone is, and Malone ended up losing all of his cable companies. What is your statutory authority? What is your statutory authority? It doesn't amount to much if it's relegated to a footnote. And there's no case Glendora versus Marshall. This is a lie by another liar for hire, Ben Wiles in Albany. The case is Glendora versus Malone, who paid Wiles to do this, but Malone lost all of his cable TV stations to AT&T. It shows no acumen at all to put this into a footnote. And Glendora made a record for all time, all over the world, of Sawrock's lack of keenness in intellectual and practical matters. Sawrock gives Glendora a platform to spring from with high bounce. Cablevision's application policy complies with the first come, first served non-discriminatory requirement under New York State regulations, and that comes from the Public Service Commission, which we all know to be the Public Disservice Commission. If you want what you ask for at the Public Service Commission, then you give them money. Now this is a lot of money. You're competing with people like Cablevision. And that's the way Sawrock leaves it. It's sort of a dangling clause. Nothing comes after it. But we all know what its origin is, and we all know who paid for it. How's your father? We all know its worth. We all, with easy perspicacity, know its ridiculous incongruity. We all know its deficiency and its insufficiency. They all wear the face of Walter A. Sawrock. And so Spat dismissed Maroney's complaint, and I ask you, is anybody surprised? Was anybody expecting reason or truth or consistency with the opinions generally held? With common sense? With integrity? With honesty? With honor? Were you expecting anything consistent with that? Accordingly, Cablevision's policy is entirely compliant with both federal and state law. Big lie. Big paid for lie. Big soul selling. Which would you rather have, folks? Your soul? Or this cheating? Accordingly, quote unquote, is Sawrock lie number 54 in his 6 pages. Maroney is a physicist, a man of great intellect. He's a PhD. He knows inertia, force equal mass times acceleration, and for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. He also understands the laws of thermodynamics, that judges are on a constant state of increasing chaos, disarray, and decay. And I do mean the judge who caused all this, Christian F. Hummel. This is page 88. Kappa Kappa, Glendora's vehement denunciation of Sawrock's last page, page 6. Therefore, she should be denied the use of this court for such purposes going forward, and defendants should be awarded sanctions for costs and attorney's fees incurred in opposing this motion. Says Glendora, therefore is non sequitur. He said nothing before it to make it a therefore. And this court has no use. And it's res judicata, it's collateral estoppel, it's already been ruled against. Defendants are Bennett and Amato. They haven't earned anything. All they did was maliciously, viciously, selfishly, with no patriotism or allegiance to the USA, vehemently, virulently violate the law. That's all Bennett and Amato did. They didn't do anything in this motion or in this legal work. They spat on society, spat. spit on society, which has been so good to them. Charles Dolan gave himself $9 million in 2005 and gave his son another $9 million in 2005. Do you hear, folks? This is subscriber money, your money. He gave the shareholders zero. Does this tell you what kind of a family the Dolans are? Bennett and Amato do not have any attorneys by the court's implicit admission, because they never proved that they are attorneys for Bennett and Amato. Nor do they have any standing in the Columbia County Supreme Court, because they couldn't produce it, and Hummel covered up for them. Attorney fees cannot be paid to non-attorneys. Attorney's fees require an inquest, anonymization, proof of payment. We are very interested in seeing such proof. We want to know who paid for this, if anybody did. Maybe it was volunteer. Glendora has sued Sarok, Satterley, Cecilia, and White Plains for the hours, dollars, and herbs and damages that they have caused her. And they've already been sued in federal court in Omnibus 28. Conclusion by Sarok. Glendora's frivolous motion, which Glendora has crossed out, should be denied, and Glendora has put in not denied. And attorney's fees awarded, and Glendora puts in not awarded. And Glendora should be denied the use of this court without obtaining leave prior to filing any pleadings. It's already adjudicated, Sarok. You are so repetitive. That's just a sign of ignorance. It's just a sign of no acuity. Sarok never mentions that he's making a motion to renew. And Sarok has told 58 lies. And Sarok never can learn not to ask for the same relief twice. You ask the court for relief once, you don't ask for it twice. White Plains Court has already told him that, and he's obtuse enough to appeal it. Some people just cannot learn. The twisted signature tells you how it is. I'm going to go over and show you Sarok's twisted signature. We are at page 90 out of 98. This is the case where Diane Bennett and Alyssa Amato dropped Glendora's time slot from 10 p.m. to 4 p.m. just so fewer people would see it. And he says they're attorneys for Amato and Bennett, and this just simply is not so. They are not. And within a year, folks, he will be out. Lambda Lambda, and this is Jot Thoughts. Nowhere does Sarok declare under penalty of perjury that he is telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help him God. Nowhere does he declare that he's fully familiar with the facts and circumstances. Well, he isn't. Nor is he their attorney. Nor is he qualified in Columbia County. Call Satterley in a month or so and ask for Sarok. Like McQuaid before him and Strickland before her, you will hear no longer with the firm. His first assignment was to stop the collection of $5,020 in the White Plains City Court. And what a mess he made of that, and how he failed. He had to pay $5,020 into the White Plains City Court. Sarok kids nobody but himself. He is gossamer. Glendora got a call from a $60 million plus lawsuit in Westchester County Surrogate Court. For 2.5 hours she listened to the Machiavellianism and then was asked, would you like to interview the victim on TV? Glendora said yes, and will give the victim all the time requested. Surrogate court is suspect for a long time. Look at Emanuele in Westchester. Now, Hummel, acting Supreme Court Justice, County of Columbia, is the surrogate judge in the County of Rensselaer. Now figure that one out. It is a dilemma. Glendora has known that Anthony Scarpino for a decade. He's the surrogate judge in Westchester. We have had multitudinous long talks together, once in his luxurious penthouse chambers in White Plains. She asked him to be her signer for North Castle, Yorktown System, Cablevision, and he declined. It was for the best. Glendora has 2 signers in the Yorktown system now and in Cross River that even Cecilia Savarino cannot scare away. They're in there firmly. Now, Anthony Scarpino is a good audience for Glendora's jokes, and he keeps her informed about his career. You see the dilemma, folks? Anthony Scarpino, I would say, is more than an acquaintance. And here I'm given all of these bad reports about him and about many, many bad reports about surrogate court. So where do I stand? Well, it's easy. You go with what's right. You don't sell your soul. But unlike Hummel, Glendora will be fair to both sides. Glendora has a cat that she calls Judge. That's .com. I call her a judge because she sleeps on legal paper. Bennett, Amato, Spat, Amato, Flynn, Public Service Commission, Sawrock, Callaghy, sadly play like kids. When one does something wrong, they all stick up to each other, for each other. They put zero value on their souls. Glendora is protected by the common law. Hummel is not to decide the facts. The common law says that the judge does not decide the facts. The judge does not decide the law. The jury of 12 peers decides the facts and the law. That's common law. And Hummel was there by common law, says that the judge is there for one reason only, to protect the rights of both sides. Hummel failed at this. He failed abysmally, ineptly, and amateurishly. On page 93, Glendora will be taking Bennett, Amato, Spat, Amato, Flynn, and company, Sawrock, Callaghy, sadly Hummel, to the big judge, the big court. The record is wide open. Truth, justice, honor, and honesty, and integrity reign. That's where she'll take them to court. It's over, kids. It's over. Hummel is not incorrigible. He is not irredeemable. Nobody is. We just have to pray more ardently and more arduously. Now, this is from the Daily Bread. Very inspiring daily devotional. And here it is, Hummel. And so I printed this out for you. And it's by Mark DeHaan. And it's 2 pages. And at the end, you'll find a prayer. Father in heaven, that's for you, Hummel. I hope you make it. Next to the last page. Under penalty of perjury, Glendora proudly avouches that she has told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help her God. And that she served this paper today on all of the people that you saw. I videotaped all the envelopes for you. And her a fortiori is that all of the relief demanded in Glendora's Rule 60B motion for relief must be granted together with the cost of this motion and any of this, with the cost of this motion and any further relief just and proper. And this is July 1st, 2006. Thank you, God, for a new month. I've seen people stand by and not get a new month. And it's in the County of Columbia, the state of New York. This is Opus 1424. That's 1424 legal papers. It says here it took 26 hours, but now I know it to be 28 hours. The cost was $55.64 to print and post it. Each one cost $2.87 to post. And the internet number is circa 4,353-8 all the way up to -12 for the 12th edition or 13th edition. So that would be 4,357-12. And it's signed Glendora without prejudice, the common law, Uniform Commercial Code, Article 1, Section 207. And you know what the mailing list is. And I say, God be with you till we meet again. God be with you till we meet again. Keep love's banner floating o'er you. Put his loving arms around you. God be with you till we meet again. Oh yeah, and how's your father? And the last page for everybody to see is, lawyers are not licensed by the state. Doctors have to have a state license. Lawyers do not. All a lawyer has is a union card from a trade association called the American Bar Association. The ABA is nothing but a trade union like the electricians union, Glendora. We did it, folks. Must have taken 4 hours. Took 4 programs. Let's see what the happy book says. The wind keeps turning the pages. You keep yourself aware of what you want in life and what you don't want. Tell me, honey, what do you want? What do you want in life? You want fulfillment, attainment, accomplishment, the full use of your potential. You want money, you want a big car, you want a big house. You can have all that. You want people to applaud you. You want to be popular, successful, great. Well, you can have all that. And what don't you want? You don't want a country that's falling apart because it's been kidnapped by gangsters like Sarok, Satterley, Callaghan, Hummel. Here. There you go. There's some baked beans up there. I put some baked beans up there for you. That's an ant. Your country's been kidnapped by gangsters. You don't want that. You keep yourself aware of what you want in life and what you don't want in life. Our eternal home. Peter said,
Sherman, the famed Hollywood lawyer. Hi, Mickey. Mickey Sherman and I appear.
The backdrop that's going to be used for it. And I believe it tells